Good afternoon, YouTube. Today, there's something that dawned on me that I really must share with you. Here is an interview from a few videos that I made ago, captured by BLOOMBERG, an interview with Catherine McKenna, talking about her plans for the future. I'll replay the clip for you, and then I'll pause it at a certain time, and I will continue on my train of thought. This is very interesting.
Well, there's really three goals that I've set. One is to get projects built that make a difference in the lives of Canadians. We know here in Toronto how important public transit is. Hear a lot of people saying we can do a lot better. Second thing is the economic piece. There's a huge economic opportunity, a jobs opportunity. Also, we need to be leveraging the private sector. I worked on Bay Street, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. I did an event with Mark Carney in 2016, and he was talking about the trillions that we need for infrastructure, public infrastructure, in particular relating to climate change. And so we need to figure out how we're going to finance that. And the third thing is climate change. So when you think about climate change, it's a huge risk to our infrastructure. I think there's an announcement maybe today by the Ontario government about erosion in Lake Erie and the impacts it's having. Everything is exacerbated by climate change, but we also have a huge opportunity. We can build better. We can build cleaner, healthier cities with better public transit, with net zero buildings. So huge opportunity there too.
So a lot to unpack there. Obviously, when we've talked to people, and this Liberal government from the get-go talked a lot about infrastructure projects to help fuel the economy longer term. We've had a lot of economists, industry players over the last few years that said, we've seen some action. We would have thought by this point we would have seen more. Have you felt like it has taken some time to get some of these projects off the ground?
Well, I mean, first of all, let's start with our economic record. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 4 decades, fastest, growth in the G7. So we have a strong economic record, and infrastructure is absolutely part of that. The infrastructure investment supports 100,000 jobs or more, and yeah, I mean, absolutely, we need to get more projects going, and that's our opportunity. But we've done a lot of projects have happened. You have to plan for some of these projects, and we came in with a historic investment in infrastructure that really is already improving lives of Canadians, but there's more to do.
So when you're having these conversations in different provinces around the country, what are some of the challenges? I think sometimes it's one thing to talk about the projects. It's the next step of the federal government having these conversations, whether it's with provincial leaders or municipal leaders, about getting things to the next level. What's the biggest challenge in all of that?
Well, I want to frame it as an opportunity. I mean, look, levels or orders of government need to work together. When I talk to Canadians, they don't say, oh, the province needs to do this, the city needs to do this, the federal government. They just say, build better infrastructure, build better public transit, deal with the affordable housing crisis, make sure everyone has access to high-speed internet. And so the opportunity is for different levels of government, politicians, to realize that we serve Canadians and we need to get good things built that improve lives. And so I hit the ground running. I had a call already last week with John Tory, with Carolyn Mulrooney. I'm meeting with them today, and it's really, okay, let's get this done. Let's move forward. There's some really big opportunities, and I've been really pleased to see the progress between the City of Toronto and the Province of Ontario, and we're a willing partner. We've allocated money to Ontario, almost $5 billion, so now I think we got to get started.
We had an interesting development in recent days with that CN rail strike, which I think reminded a lot of Canadians how reliant we are on some of the key players in transportation to move things across the country. Did that sort of create an opportunity for you to spark any new ideas on the way we approach moving things around the country?
Well, to be honest, I've only been in the job for a week, but I will say, I mean, making sure that we resolved that strike was important. And I think it was a reminder to everyone how important infrastructure is to our economy, because that was having a huge impact rippling across the economy. So we have an opportunity to get things built that grow the economy. You talk about the Gordie Howe Bridge. That's a huge opportunity. How do we get goods across the border? How do we get people across the border? But big public transit projects, also really good. And even as I get briefed, high-speed internet. It means people can live in different communities. They don't have to move, that they have access. I met a woman from the Arctic. She wanted to sell sealskin products on the internet on Etsy, but she couldn't get high-speed internet. So these are all opportunities to grow the economy, to have social outcomes, to make lives better for people. And also, as I say, we need to be tackling climate change, and we have an opportunity to build better, to get people around better in ways that are cleaner.
Let's dig deeper into that point, this idea of taking your learnings from the environment portfolio and bringing them to infrastructure. I mean, in an ideal world, what are the kinds of green or clean, however you want to describe it, infrastructure projects that you would see built?
Well, they're across the board. We're lucky now we have new technologies. Artificial intelligence is in big data, hugely important. When we build now, we can be much smarter about how we build and how we use energy. It also, I always talk about this, it saves folks money. It's also cleaner. It also helps meet our climate goals. How people get around, get people out of cars, which is better. I mean, you can get home faster if you build better public transit, which is spending more time. I have 3 kids. I mean, who doesn't want to spend more time with their...
Okay, I've heard enough. Now, what the idea that I had this morning, it was climate change is the pretense to communist acts and totalitarian government power. What I learned from this clip, and I apologize for repeating again to my viewers, because I really don't like to hear Catherine McKenna's ideas too much, since it's not even that. Her ideas are so narrow scoped to only what she values. That's why it's a climate change religion. But apart from that, climate change itself is a pretense to communist or totalitarian acts by government. It's the excuse that they're selling the public to try to control and even inhibit the freedoms that we all enjoy. And the reason that I can connect it is because, okay, her focus in this is climate change. By extension, she wants to control and build mass infrastructure in public transit. She was talking about trillions of dollars for climate change infrastructure. Net zero buildings, which I can only presume is buildings that don't require or don't excrete carbon, to the atmosphere and so on. So climate neutral infrastructure, get people out of cars, and then all of this, even her silly AI, big data to help build cleaner and more, least expensive. All of this nonsense. Okay, let's talk about the freedom for people to get into their cars and drive to work, or rather than that, the freedom for people to get in their cars and drive anywhere. Think about for a second the benefits that your car gives you, okay? Since we've invented cars, cities have, the entire world has fundamentally changed by the creation of the car. Not only was it a device, a technology that could get us anywhere much rapidly than walking, for instance, protect us from the elements, be able to transport goods, and so on and so on. The endless benefits of a combustion engine car is limitless, right? You may not know this, but I really enjoy cars. I very much appreciate the gift that Henry Ford gave to us, which is what brought me to this clip by Jordan Peterson here that I would like to share with you. Please observe how he came across the idea that this actually helped me connect the dots between the government enacting communism, essentially using climate change. Here, watch, please.
This is partly why the existentialists, they had this concept called alienation, and the idea was that human beings become alienated from their creative products. So, and here's why it happens. So imagine Henry Ford makes the assembly line, right? So Ford has no idea what's going to happen when he makes the assembly line, because he's just trying to figure out a fast way to make cars, or he thinks that what he's making is cars. So he thinks he's making an assembly line for cars, and he thinks he's making cars. And you think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, first of all, the assembly line absolutely transformed the entire planet, right? Because it brought in the era of mass cheap manufacturing. It's like it was way more than he thought it was. And then, did he make a car? Well, a car is something that hypothetically takes you relatively effectively from point A to point B. It was really a replacement for the horse and buggy. I mean, the first cars looked like that. They were horseless carriages. Well, did he make a car? Well, it's hard to tell what Henry Ford made. He made a very effective way for transforming the atmosphere. Right, and the fact that it also happened to take you from point A to point B might be just completely irrelevant compared to the fact that it was the internal combustion engine and its rapid distribution completely changed the constituent, the fundamental chemical structure of the atmosphere itself. It completely transformed cities. It blew out the rural community. Everyone moved to the cities, right? It made all the cities built around the automobile. But then it had this tremendous political and economic significance too. So, I mean, part of the reason that, because you think, well, is a car is a way to get from point A to point B, but no, it's not a machine. It's also the embodiment of an idea, and it's a very strange idea. A collectivist society would have never invented the car, because the car is predicated on the idea that you could own a conveyance that would get only you and only you from somewhere to somewhere else without ever asking anybody for any permission.
Right. So, in this way, Catherine McKenna, what she's talking about, essentially, okay, I want to get people out of their cars and into public transit because public transit is greener. Okay, think about the freedom that she's violating with that statement and casually saying, we will get people out of their cars. Think about it. The thought and the value that guides that idea is an idea like she doesn't want you to have that freedom of choice. Okay, you have the benefits of your car, for example, that will take you wherever you like, but it's much more than that. It's the freedom of choice, right? So there is an element behind what she talks about that is totalitarian in its purpose. So I'll try to connect it one last time for you so that I can connect it more or less for myself, because I don't know how it dawned on me. But essentially, think of the car itself as something that gives you freedom, something that gives you the ability. I enjoy driving my car. I enjoy going on my commute. I enjoy it less now because there are certain elements with that are happening within our city that creates total inefficiency, but that's besides the point. When you go on vacation, for example, and you don't go by airplane, for example, you take your car and you drive across the US, like what many people used to do. Or you take your car, you drive across Europe, or you drive across Canada, it doesn't matter. That's a liberty of freedom, the liberty to travel, right? Public transit is government-owned, government-controlled, right? McKenna wants to spend trillions on an asset that will be completely government-controlled, government-regulated. So essentially, in this way, it is a stepping stone up to totalitarianism in government. What the problem with McKenna is, she can't conceptualize a view apart from climate change. She has such a narrow scope of focus that what she's doing is essentially swiping at ideas without completely understanding what she's talking about. The fact that she talks about AI, using AI to make to conceptualize buildings that will be cheaper to build and so on. Like, that's an idea that's ludicrous in its execution. Good engineers, human engineers, will put it together far more efficiently and much more cheaper than hiring a robot to do it. Because, like, I mean, if you're an engineer, you know enough already that, if you're working in that business for 40, 50 years or whatever, you know the simplest and easiest way to execute any idea. So, but again, understand the freedom that cars bring. Take away, for instance, the fact that they burn fossil fuels. That itself is a gift. I tell you this. When Henry Ford conceptualized the Model T, for example, he was thinking about how families could get here, get there. A car cheap and easy to build. A car that was structurally sound, that could survive the different terrain required, the rough terrain at that time, and still make it. It's like a sport utility vehicle, a recreational vehicle, whatever you want to call it, but highly durable and highly practical and usable, and so beneficial to and affordable to people anywhere so that it could benefit a massive amount of human beings. It's impossible to calculate the benefits that it gave to human beings, right? The car itself is a symbol of freedom. It's a liberty we enjoy, but we're unaware of because we would never conceptualize a universe in which we couldn't have them. And what Catherine McKenna is saying is we should not have them. No more. Get people out of their cars and into my beautiful public transit. Right? In this city of Calgary, we have a mayor who believes that bicycles were supposed to replace cars. And in his execution spent and wasted millions and millions of dollars in trying to make bicycle paths and bicycle incentive programs so that people would abandon their cars and use bikes instead to commute downtown. Essentially, he failed because of the elements. Winter prevents us from using bicycles practically year-round. Now, I know a handful of people that still bike, but like I myself find it extremely impractical to bike when it's minus 40, minus 30, and even minus 20 degrees. And the reason is because my car is heated. Right? What I'm saying is the climate change radicalization, the religion itself, that has to be labeled as a willing act, indoctrination, and force people a pretense to totalitarianism in government. This is what essentially, this is what I say that our people should do, and our people should do this. Get them out of their cars. Take away the freedom of the car itself in favor of climate change because we don't want to harm the environment. Right? So, in that way, when Peterson talked about a collectivist society couldn't conceptualize the car, right? Because it's predicated on the freedom of you being able to own the car and take yourself wherever you wish. It's an act of liberty, right? When Henry Ford designed the car, he did it exactly for that purpose, to give people liberty to do many activities that before its invention would never have been possible, conceptual, like feasible even. And nobody thinks about this. McKenna is delusional in her thought because it represents a totalitarianism perspective. She doesn't have room for any other ideas apart from her own ideology. It's a very narrow-minded focus, a narrow scope. She doesn't see beyond her ideology. Her only goal is to ensure that that Canada itself will bend to her will bend to the will of nonsense, essentially, because it's much more than that. It's a violation of freedom that we enjoy. The car itself was an invention to create freedom, liberty, in addition to the transportation, which is its base thing. It's if it was only for transporting from A to B, people that drive their cars and get pleasure out of it know that's not true. You drive your car to get you to a destination, but you can also drive for the pleasure of your family, to drive for a vacation, to drive to a family member's or other family members' houses for a dinner party, or to drive to get food or groceries to sustain your family, your household. You drive to pay your bills. You drive to go to work to sustain income. You drive to go to school, to drop your kids off to school. Think about how many different things that it is dependent on, right? The fact that McKenna is trying to restrict all transportation just to public transit, which she very much stated there in that interview, I find it resounding very strongly. That's the problem. That exposes her true intent. Right? So in this way, I felt very strongly to talk about how this person should never be allowed to maintain and keep her post. She should be a backbencher like yesterday. She should never have been given the responsibility of that post because she's not, let's say, wise enough to actually to hold that authority and power over people. And again, this is why politics, it isn't a game. The universe she lives in is like a delusional. It's not based in reality in any way. It's delusional. Imagine if she fully executed to her full power that conceptualization she's thinking about. Then we would all be taking public transit. Right? She'd make it so expensive, impractical even, for us to sustain our freedom using our own cars. This is the reason what Peterson was on about. It was beautiful. A collectivist society would never invent the car. Right. And a collectivist society would also try to suppress the freedom of people that already have cars. Because they don't want you to have freedom. They want you to live in the regime that they've built. And they want to restrict your freedom in any way they can to achieve the result that they want to achieve, which is essentially a communist design. Doesn't matter how people suffer as long as they bend to the will of the government in favor of the collectivist society. Right? The difference is the ideal now is climate change. That's their excuse for violating our freedom everywhere they go. So I ask you to think about it with me. Conceptualize what she intends to execute. And think about where it will put us. In reality, try to imagine it. All we have, or most people have, let's say, all of us have public transit. That's it. Get them out of their cars. It is a violation of freedom. and liberty that we all enjoy. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Please subscribe to my channel if you like.